Most people think that finding a hidden treasure map is the best thing that could ever happen to you. But if you look at the actual history of these things, the map is usually the exact moment someone's life starts completely falling apart. The thing is, we all love the idea of a secret code that leads to millions of dollars because it feels like a puzzle you can actually think your way through to change your life. But there is this one specific set of papers from the 1800s called the Beale Ciphers that basically acts like a trap for anyone who looks at it. It promises an absolute fortune, but the reality is that it has systematically ruined almost every single person who has ever tried to solve it. So, the whole story starts back in 1820 in this tiny, quiet town in Virginia called Lynchburg. This gentleman named Thomas Beale walks into a local inn, and he ends up staying there for a few months, becoming good friends with the innkeeper, a reliable man named Robert Morris. Right before Beale leaves to head back out west, he gives Morris this locked iron box and tells him to keep it completely safe. He says if he doesn't come back within 10 years, he'll send a letter with the key to open it. But the thing is, Beale completely vanishes into the frontier, and the key never shows up. Morris keeps his promise and waits over 20 years before he finally decides to break the lock open, and instead of finding gold or jewels inside, he just finds 3 pages covered entirely in neat rows of random numbers. And that's where the obsession takes hold, because those numbers weren't just random clutter. They were a massive puzzle that promised a fortune. I remember when I first pulled up the actual scans of these pages on my computer, and just looking at the columns of numbers made my head spin a little bit, because it looks like something you should be able to solve if you just stare at it long enough. Morris spent the rest of his life completely consumed by these pages, neglecting his business and letting everything else slide, and he ended up dying broke because he just couldn't let it go. But before he died, he ended up passing the papers along to a friend, and this friend actually managed to crack one of the pages. The way he did it was honestly pretty simple, because he figured out it was a book cipher, which means every single number on the page corresponds to the first letter of a word in a specific text. He tried all kinds of books, from the Bible to local legal documents, and finally, he tried the Declaration of Independence. So if a number on the sheet was 115, he would go to the 115th word of declaration, take the first letter of that word, and write it down. And because he tried that specific text, the second page suddenly started turning into actual English words right in front of him. It turns out that second page was a detailed description of the treasure itself, and it claimed that Beale and a crew of men found a massive amount of gold and silver while hunting out west and brought it back to Virginia, burying it in a secret vault in Bedford County. The text literally says they buried thousands of pounds of gold and silver, which today would be worth well over $60 million. But the catch, and this is the exact thing that really messed people up for the next century, is that the cracked page only told them what was in the vault, while the exact location was hidden in the first page, and the names of the people who owned it were in the third page, and those 2 pages were encrypted using completely different keys that nobody could find. Because that second page proved the treasure was supposedly real, it drove people absolutely insane. Once the papers were published in a little pamphlet in the late 1800s, people from all over the country started pouring into the Virginia hills with shovels and picks. And the stories of what happened to these treasure hunters are just tragic, because they weren't just casual hobbyists having fun. They were people who completely lost their minds to the numbers. There was a story about a man who bought up massive tracts of land in the area, hired huge crews of workers, and spent every single dollar he had blasting hillsides with dynamite. And he ended up losing his entire family and going completely bankrupt because he was convinced he was just 1 foot away from the vault. I noticed something similar when I was looking through the old journals of the people who tried to break it later on, especially once computers became a thing. People built entire software programs just to run variations on these numbers, and they would sit in dark rooms for days on end, skipping sleep, ignoring their families, and letting their actual jobs fall apart, just waiting for the text to clear up. It makes you realize that the real danger of the Beale ciphers isn't the physical exhaustion of digging in the dirt. It's the mental loop you get stuck in, because your brain keeps telling you that the answer is right there, and if you just try one more book or one more code variation, you'll suddenly be a millionaire. But the big question that nobody can really agree on is whether the whole thing is just a massive, brilliant hoax, or if there actually is a fortune buried out there in the woods. The thing is, a lot of modern codebreakers have looked at the first and third ciphers and noticed some really weird patterns. Some experts say the numbers don't have the natural distribution of a real language, meaning they might just be completely random strings of numbers meant to look like a code to trick people. And when you look at the guy who published the pamphlet in 1885, he was selling them for 50 cents a piece, so it's entirely possible he just made up a wild adventure story to make a quick buck during a tough economic time. But then again, you look at the second cipher, and it works so perfectly with the Declaration of Independence that it feels almost impossible for someone to fake the rest of it just for a cheap prank. The details in the text about the weight of the gold, the iron pots they used, and the way they secured the vault feel incredibly specific for a total lie. So you're left with this completely balanced mystery where both sides make perfect sense, and that's exactly why the obsession never really dies out, because as long as there's even a tiny percentage of a chance that it's real, someone is going to keep looking. At the end of the day, the people who walk away from the Beale Ciphers with their lives intact are the ones who realize that the code isn't a puzzle to be solved, it's a test of when to stop. Making real progress in your life and keeping your sanity usually means knowing when a problem is just going to drain your energy without ever giving you anything back. Because the real tragedy of the treasure isn't that it's buried in the ground, it's that it completely buries anyone who tries to find it.